Yeah, let's go live. What do you say? I mean, it is 9 o'clock Eastern time, so I mean, that's what I'm supposed to do. So I might as well go live and do this show tonight. Hope all of you are doing fantastic out there. I have a marvelous, stupendous, exhilarating, exciting show planned for all of you tonight. What will we be covering tonight? I'm going to tell you about the next Unfound now that will be coming out probably tomorrow. I'm going to tell you a little bit about a meeting I'm going to be having with at least a few of my assistants tomorrow. I want to talk to you about what's going on with missing people over there in England. Want to do a follow-up story on, remember those two women that went missing regarding the custody issue. I'm going to do an update on that story. I have an update for you on that. There was an article written within the past week called The Dark Side of True Crime. I'm going to read some of that. And of course, I have some comments on that, have some updates, maybe a couple stories that we Unfound is covered on this live show. I've covered on this live show over the last couple years. Some updates there. And it was weird. I had kind of like deja vu all over again type of thing. I want to talk about this disappearance of Heather Teague. Teague. It is still unsolved, but I'll just tell you why it was. I came upon it recently, and it was very weird for me to come across it. Hopefully, we'll get to that, and hopefully, I'll get to this story about a disappearance that it was solved through DNA. However, the missing person was originally found in a chimney. So hopefully I will get to all of that before we are done tonight. And even I have this other story about murders that happen in the United States, but that are initiated from other countries. And I want to go over this still unsolved murder. Maybe I'll get to that as well. So I got a lot on the agenda. Hopefully, I'll get to all of it. I have a question from Charlotte that I'm going to answer tonight. Also, Glenn asked me a question about Brian Schaefer. Going to get to that. Just a lot to do. I always, as you know, probably by now, I like to come to this live show over-prepared with more information, more news or whatever than I think I'm going to need. And so I'm not scrambling for stuff, trying to fill in like the last 15, 20 minutes with banter or something. I really try to make sure I have enough interesting news, things I want to talk about, that I don't feel then too bad if I miss a few of those things. That means that all of the 2 hours got filled up pretty nicely. So, what's going on with me since you saw me last? Still got this sinus thing going on. I don't know what it is. I feel, I guess, fine, but it's almost like I have an allergy or something going on, which would be very unusual for me for this time of year. But maybe you can even tell it in my voice. I feel very nasally. And I've been, not to gross all of you out, but I've been blowing my nose quite a bit today. Got some drainage. I have no idea what it is, but it's kind of, I guess it's been around since last weekend when I almost killed myself out there on the disc golf course. Maybe it has something to do with that. I'm just not sure. But so I got the sinus thing going on. Otherwise, I feel fine. Regarding my trivia team, I've not really played any disc golf. I've been practicing some putting here in my place, but I haven't gone out to throw since you all saw me last. But my trivia team last Wednesday, you know that I'm part of this team that's been around for a very, very long time. And we were actually leading going to the final question, actually by quite a bit, but we missed the final question. And so we didn't get any points that night. So we were out in front, like overall by a lot. But now we're in second place by just a little bit. A team has passed us up. I think there are 4 more weeks to go in this season. So I think plenty of time, I think. And we just have to be more reliable on those final questions. If we never missed a final question, I think we would have won almost every week. Because it seems we're always near the top at the end. That's just the way it works out. We answer a lot of questions correctly, and then sometimes that final question just gets us. And in fact, since I remember it, I'm going to ask all of you the final question from this past Wednesday night. All right. So nobody cheat. I don't want any cheating out there. Don't go to Wikipedia. Don't go to Google. I want you to try to answer this if you can. What is the national animal of Scotland? What is the national animal? And I know we have some Euros who once in a while watch this live show. I don't know if any of them are from Scotland, but what is the national animal? No cheating now. I don't want anybody posting in here who went and is cheating. All right. What is the national animal of Scotland? And so while you're all thinking about that, I'm going to see who is in the chat tonight, who is watching. Hello, Charlie. What's going on with you? Hope you're doing well out there in Colorado. Lisa, you are early, Lisa. How about that? Just back from beautiful Western Kansas. Lisa, I've been through Western Kansas. And, the thing about Western Kansas, it looks a lot like Eastern, Northern, and Southern Kansas. That's what I have to say about Western Kansas. Lisa, at the reunion, I was overhearing a second cousin talking about her sister going missing. Then it turned out her husband killed her and rolled her in a carpet. Someone interrupted her story right then. Wow. We have to get names for us, Lisa, so we can all look that story up. Your second cousin's sister went missing. Turned out her husband killed her. It's very sad. But if you have any more details, Lisa, if it made it into the news, I'd certainly like to know about it. Charlotte, I'm going to answer your question tonight. Jasmine, how are you? Karen, Glenn, good to see you from Middle Georgia. Glenn, is that like Middle Earth? Is that like J.R.R. Tolkien kind of stuff? Middle Georgia, Middle Earth? I guess you could also say Central Georgia, right? Amy, good to see you. Kathy, look at you. Hazel, good to see you. Sheree, thank you for moderating tonight. Deborah, you don't have to apologize. I'm the only person who isn't allowed to be late, but good to see you, Deborah. Good to see you. Sheree, Deborah's answer is the eagle. The national animal of Scotland is the eagle. It is not the eagle. Kathy says a wild guess, a collie, so like a dog. No, not a dog. And now we have a couple people who have actually answered the correctly. And I'm hoping Hazel and Jasmine, I'm hoping you didn't cheat. Okay, please tell me that you didn't cheat. Now, Hazel, I know you're not an American, so maybe you're more likely to know this answer. But, yeah, Hazel's saying, well, I am British. All right, so that helps. So I just hope that neither of you cheated. We'll get back to that. Lisa says, I'll work on getting names. Hopefully a Google search will do the job. All right. Very good, Lisa. Charlotte is guessing a sheep for the national animal of Scotland. No, that is incorrect as well. So, okay. Well, as you are watching tonight, please give this video a thumbs up. Please give the show a thumbs up, as I request that you do every week. I hope that you will subscribe to this channel if you've not subscribed to this channel before. Of course, you can see along the bottom of the screen there, support Unfound at patreon.com/Unfound podcast. Sign up to get all sorts of cool things that other people do not get. And then if you'd like to go one step further, just like with Patreon, why don't you hit the join button below and you get some cool stuff there that nobody else gets as well. Now, I do realize this is Memorial Day. That only means something, I guess, to people here or Americans who are taking part. So I know maybe probably that the viewership will not be what it usually is. A lot of people out there taking advantage. I know here in Florida, we had beautiful weather here today, but all I did was work. I got to view it out my balcony, but otherwise, I did not get to partake in it at all. Work must get done. I had to put together this entire live show today because I did not get it done yesterday. So once again, subscribe, join, share, do whatever you got to do for this live show. I really appreciate it. Glenn says, looking at my last name, I should have known that answer. Well, I guess, yeah, of course, McDonald, I guess, is Scottish, right, Glenn? Right. Okay. So to answer the question, the trivia question now you should know it was multiple choice, but I didn't want to make it that easy for all of you. The trivia on last Wednesday night, the multiple choices were red deer, badger, gray wolf, and the unicorn. And the answer is the unicorn. The unicorn is the national animal of Scotland. Now, we're just going to try to forget that unicorns don't exist. I don't know how you can have a national animal that doesn't exist. That is a mind blower. And I will tell you that when we were contemplating what answer we wanted to put down, we did not even consider the unicorn because, once again, it's not an animal. It's make-believe. But that's what it is. And in fact, now I know that the unicorn can be found all over all sorts of Scottish art and everything else in the country of Scotland. Now I know that. I guess I'll know that for the rest of my life. However, I can also predict that I'll never need to know that for the rest of my life. Deborah says, aren't they mythical? Yeah, they are. So like I said, I don't know how you have a national animal that doesn't exist. Of course, here in the United States, I don't know if we have a national animal, but certainly the animal most commonly associated with the United States is the eagle. And we actually came very close to making the turkey the national bird or animal way back in the 1700s. Luckily, smarter heads prevailed and we made it the eagle. It'd be funny if it were a turkey. That would be funny. But of course, the eagle is a prominent part in a lot of national art for the United States. And you can find a lot of totem pole, or not totem poles, but flag poles that have eagle heads on them and things like that. So I guess they're doing that same type of thing over there in Scotland with unicorns. Unbelievable. How weird. Hazel, what do you mean it doesn't exist? Try telling that to a world of 5-year-old girls. I know, Hazel. I know. And yes, I've seen the Despicable Me movies too, and like the third one where that little girl finds a goat with only one horn or whatever it was. So I'm familiar with that, Hazel. I only knew because I'm from UK and had Scottish boyfriend and a best friend. Funny, I dreamed about her last night. Well, that is certainly a coincidence there, Hazel. Okay. So yes, Memorial Day, day here in the United States. We'll remember all of the fallen military members who have died. And in fact, while I was doing my work today, I was watching the Band of Brothers series. Remember that from HBO like 20 some years ago? That came out. And I actually have all of them on DVD that I haven't watched in a while, but they were playing them one by one on the AMC channel today. And those were so good. Those are so good. The Band of Brothers series. I think there's maybe 10 episodes, something like that. Just spectacular. Just very, very well. I guess it was very, very expensive to make, especially considering that it just went straight to HBO. But so good. Just so good. A lot of military movies, TV shows, and documentaries on TV today. All right, let's get to the true crime part of the show tonight. And I'll start off with the James Litka poll. This is a poll that I do every week. I know most of you by now know this. I set this poll up in the discussion group on Facebook just to kind of take a temperature of the room, you might say, to see what everybody's thinking regarding the disappearance for that week. I have to admit, just tough coming up with a good poll question for James Litka's disappearance, because his disappearance doesn't really lend itself to a ton of speculation, to be frank. So I just asked what happened to James Litka. Did he go into the river by accident? Did he get pushed into the river? Did he get thrown into the river? Did he not go into the river at all? What happened to James Litka? And 100% of you, so it wasn't a very good poll question when 100% of people, every respondent answers the same way. That's not a very good question. That's my fault. Said that, yes, James Litka went into the river that he had to have crossed if he was walking home that night, by accident. No belief that any foul play was involved. No belief that he was chased into the river. Of course, by accident, I guess then rules out the idea that he went into the river as a kind of suicide. So that is what the discussion group decided. In the think tank, if you want to be a member of the think tank, patreon.com/unfound podcast, sign up at the premium level, and you can take part in the think tank discussions that we have every Sunday evening for about an hour and a half, something like that. Everybody seems to enjoy it, and you really support what we do here by joining. Pretty much the same thing. Everybody's pretty convinced that James went into the river by accident. And as for me, I've kind of decided the same thing. Although maybe it could be said that maybe I'm open more to a suicide idea maybe than many of you are. And that's really what I wrote in the blog. Once again, that can be accessed by joining up at patreon.com/unfound podcast to see my complete thoughts, my complete analysis of James Litka's disappearance. And of course, if you sign up, you get all of them that go back like 6-7 years or maybe 6 years now. So you'd have, if you sign up, you get access to all of them. So you would have a lot of reading and listening to do. As we talked about Um, in the think tank last night, and as I've had a chance to contemplate, the fact is this, and I, on one hand, I fully respect the idea that James didn't drive down to. I now, of course, somebody's corrected me on the pronunciation. It's not Eau Claire, it's Eau Claire, Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I fully respect that he didn't drive there, that he couldn't get caught up in any sort of drinking and driving like he had before. I totally respect all of that. That he went to Chippewa Falls, drove, he was sober, got on the bus there, took it down there, and then said, I'm just going to walk back to the house that I own here in Eau Claire. And then I'm guessing his plan was that his sister Kristen could just drive him back to Chippewa Falls the next day. He could sober up. It's a good way to think. The problem is that James should not have put himself in that position in the first place, in my opinion. The fact is that James had a drinking problem. And the only way you're going to get out of that drinking problem is to not be around people who are drinking. So, I mean, you would think, and this is a way I think that we lie to ourselves in so many ways. You do not have to be an alcoholic to lie to yourself, or any other kind of addict to lie to yourself about things that are going on in your life. Our egos are very, very, very good at lying to us and convincing ourselves that we can do things that we shouldn't be doing. The human mind is fantastic at that. But he shouldn't have been there. He shouldn't have been there. I don't know. You would think that when a person gets to the point that there's a breathalyzer device on his car, that it would be, what? Maybe I need to start spending more nights at home. And that I need to stop being around people who are going to go out and get crazy. And maybe instead of going down to downtown Eau Claire, which is really, we have to remember, James is 28. He wasn't 20, 21. It's going to be an area where they're going to be, mostly people are going to be a lot younger than he is. At 28, what are you doing? What exactly is the plan here? So that also comes into my mind. The fact is, my opinion, easy for me to talk, being that I'm a non-drinker. Back in the day, I'd have 1 or 2 beers. I would be the guy looking out for all of my friends who were drinking to excess. I would be the designated driver over, and there was never any deviation from that in my years in college. That's the guy that I was. That's not to say I didn't have fun. I did. Not to say that I wasn't mischievous myself and everything, but when it came to alcohol and partying and travel and cars and things, I was pretty strict. But once again, I was like 21, 22. You get to be 28 years old, you have to start asking a question. Well, what's the plan here? And that just didn't seem to be something that was going through James's mind. Seemed like a good guy otherwise. But it's clear to me that alcohol had a pretty tight grip on him, and it very well could be the reason that he went missing. Whether it was by accident, just stumbling into the river, or as, going down to the river to take a leak and falling in, or falling off that walkway, that walking bridge over, or whatever else. It could have been that. Or we also have to remember that alcohol is a depressant, and who knows what it could do to the human mind under certain conditions. So, feel horrible. I want to continue to talk to Valerie if I can continue, if I can help her out in any way. But I just came away from the entire Disappearance thinking, good guy. But if he was serious about straightening his life out, he shouldn't have been doing that night. Go play miniature golf. Go to a Starbucks. Do other things. Stay away from this party area. And in fact, when we were talking and we were doing the think tank last night, I was relaying to the members the story I remember. The musician Glenn Hughes, who is now in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He was in a group called Trapeze, and then he was part of Deep Purple. That's how he got into the Hall of Fame. And maybe some of you know, I've seen him twice in concert over the past year. Fantastic. Fantastic guy, fantastic singer, great bass player, fantastic. But he has an interview. I don't know if it's on YouTube or not anymore, but he was a huge addict. Drug addict, alcohol, everything. And he finally cleaned up his act kindly in the early 90s and has been sober ever since. And that's why he's able to be on tour. He's into his 70s and just sings like nobody's business. It's crazy. For a 70-some-year-old, for him to be up on stage and doing what he's doing and singing and everything, it's crazy. But in that interview, he admits, you want to, rock and roll? I'm all for it. You want to get crazy with music on stage and everything else, but anything other than that, I'm sorry, I just can't join you. I just can't do that anymore. But if you'd like to do other things outside, things that aren't, chemically addictive and everything, I'm all for that. But that stuff, I'm sorry, I just can't join you. And to me, that's the proper attitude. If you are a person who has an alcohol problem, drug problem, it's the way it has to be. Easy for me to talk, being that I've never had any of these problems. But you have to quit it cold turkey. You can't say, I'm going to straighten my life out, but then still hang around these people who are still doing it. It just doesn't work. So, hello, Ashley. How are you? Good to see you. Amy says, his aunt sounds like a lovely person. It takes a toll on the family. It does. And Valerie is surely a nice person. Hello, Dane. What's going on, Dane? The Dane Slayer. Do you slay Danes? How did you have fun yet? Deborah, I had a lot. I will tell you that my college years were not the most fun. I went to a very strict school, still very strict to this day. But we managed to have a good time anyway. Me and my friends would go over to Slippery Rock where my dad went to college, and we'd go down to Oakland, the suburb of Pittsburgh, the Oakland area where the University of Pittsburgh is. We'd go down there sometimes and hang out. Those were always good times. But really where I went to school was out in the middle of nowhere. And there, in my opinion, there wasn't much fun to be had. I, of course, recognize that there are certain people probably at that age of 18, 19, 20, 21 years old who probably need that kind of discipline. I did not. I was always a person, although I didn't do fantastic in college, I will tell you I didn't do well in school because I did not like going to that school, but I didn't have a choice because my parents were paying for it. They said, if we're paying, this is where you're going. What can I do? I suppose and the funny thing is I've never used my degree ever, so maybe I shouldn't have gone to school at all. But I could have easily gone to the Pitt or, some big state school. I'd never go to Penn State because I hate Penn State. But Ohio State, West Virginia, those big schools in that area of the country. I could have easily gone to any of those schools, and my parents would have never had to have worried about me getting drunk or doing anything because that's just not me. I figured that out at an early age, like when I was 13, 14, 15 years old. by myself, my parents never talked to me about it, that, this drug stuff and this alcohol stuff, man, I just think I got to stay away from it. There's just something about it that seems questionable. And of course, I was right. So I could have gone to those schools and done fine. I probably would have blossomed, really. Instead, I went to a school that I felt was very restrictive. I didn't need that type of discipline. I think a lot of kids do, but I was not one of them. So how did I have fun? We managed to have fun, just not as much fun as maybe a lot of other 18 to 23-year-olds have when they're going to school. So there you go. Rockford, hey, missed you at the think tank last night, Rockford. Seemed like a very good guy. Unfortunately, it appears he couldn't handle a sauce. That's not a question of character as much as it is genetics. Yeah, thank you, Charlotte. No, don't drink very much. Never smoked weed. Me neither. I'm not 420 friendly. Marty, where were you last night, Marty? We missed you at the think tank. Rockford, the Glenn Hughes Tony Iommi album is fantastic too. Did you know he was in Sabbath for a minute? I did. Yeah, and he got kicked out. He got into a fight. And speaking of concerts, saw Queens of the Stone Age in Santa Barbara on Friday. I got to be honest, Rockford, I probably have heard some of their songs, but I could not tell you a thing about them. But yeah, I did know that Glenn Hughes was in Black Sabbath, but he got in that fight and everything. I know that story. Oh yeah, I really need to get Glenn Hughes's book now that I think about it, but it's not on audio. Dane Noed, a diehard metal fan like yourself, Maiden, old Metallica, Slayer, Slipknot, Queensryche. Can certainly get with the Maiden, the old Metallica, and Queensryche, but I am not a Slayer or a Slipknot guy, Dane. But we can meet somewhere kind of there in the middle. Huge Queensryche fan. Operation Mindcrime, my number one favorite album of all time. Ohio State is really a big party school. I'm aware of that, Charlotte, and I would have gone to the parties. I just wouldn't have partaken in any of the alcohol action or drug action or anything else. I would have gone to those parties. But like I said, there's nobody that would have ever had to worry about me ever doing anything stupid because that's just not me. It's still not me at 53. It wasn't me at 15. It's still not me at 53. It's kind of the wham. Some people go cow tipping. I could have done that. I grew up next to a cow pasture, Glenn. I could see the cow pasture was probably, I don't know, 250 feet from my bedroom window. Cow pasture when I was growing up. Yeah. Memorial Day weekend is insane for me. Had 3 different shows going on. Never a moment's rest. Look at you, Marty, businessman. Hazel, it's a miracle you make it here on Monday with your busy weekend. Yeah, what is cow? All right, Glenn, you got to tell Hazel what cow tipping is. I'll leave that up to you. All right, let's move on to some other things. The most recent Unfound now is done. I did it today. That was one of the things I was working on today. Did not get to go out in this beautiful Florida weather doing Unfound work. And the next Unfound now is done. It will be out tomorrow on this YouTube channel, and it will be the disappearance of Sebastian Roberts. Of course, this 15-year-old autistic boy who went missing from Hendersonville, Tennessee, back at the end of February. So please be looking for that. I hope you will watch and listen to it. And when it comes out tomorrow, please give it a thumbs up. Please consider doing that. And then for all of you YouTube and Patreon supporters, your next episode of Found will also be coming out tomorrow. I also was working on that today. And, this is for all of you who aren't members. You aren't going to get to partake in this, although I think you'd really, really enjoy this series. It's called Found. I've been doing it for over a year now, where I analyze disappearances that eventually got solved. And this month's Disappearance to Discovery is for John List, of course, the mass murderer. He murdered his 3 kids, his wife, and his mother, and then he went missing for 18 years. So I take a look at how he went missing, why he was able to stay missing for as long as he did, and then how he was eventually found alive, how he was caught, and try to kind of look at it in the context of all the disappearances that we feature here on Unfound. What can we learn from this? What can we learn from these disappearances that eventually do get solved? Whether it has to be the person is deceased or alive, whatever happened. Last year, I even did the disappearance of the Titanic. So if that sounds interesting to you, you should sign up either by hitting the join button below if you're watching on YouTube or going to patreon.com/unfound podcast. So all you YouTube and Patreon supporters, please be looking for the Found episode that will come out tomorrow. And then I think the last bit of Unfound information that I want to pass along to all of you before we get into the national true crime news, some of these stories that I want to go over, is that I'm going to be having a meeting tomorrow evening with Marty, who is there in the chat. Everybody sees Marty. It's going to be Marty. It's going to be Assistant Cherie, who, of course, is always the moderator for this live show and has been for a long, long time. And it's also another member of the meeting tomorrow night is going to be my assistant, Eric. And I think some of you know who he is. And of course, you heard my interview with him going back to the beginning of this year when I interviewed all 4 of my assistants. So we got a lot to talk about. Haven't had a meeting in a while with Cherie and Eric, and I'm including Marty in this because Marty and I have been talking behind the scenes about some things, about merchandise, about marketing, throwing around some ideas. And so now I'm finally going to have an official meeting tomorrow night. I've already typed up the agenda and I've sent it to them. So we'll see what comes of that. A lot of good things going on with the podcast, and dare I say, a lot of things going on with the podcast that somehow one way or another need to be improved. Can they be improved? How do they get improved? Are my expectations too high? So that is what we will be discussing tomorrow night on Zoom, and I think it's going to be I think it'll be very productive. Really, really hoping for that. So, of course, that's kind of off. What we'll be talking about and everything is somewhat off the record, but hopefully, we can put some things, plans into action, make some things happen as 2024 goes on into 2025. So those are really the things, not a lot else. I don't have any case updates. No guests have died within the last couple of weeks. So I have to admit, it's been a little quiet when it actually comes to Unfound news. It really has. I guess we go through these spurts, up and down and all around. Maybe we got a little spoiled at the beginning of this year, of course, with Mary Jane Van Gilder, with the resolution to her disappearance, of course, with Donald Irwin, somebody finding his car and him in that pond, and some of these other things that have gone on. And we've kind of, maybe a little bit when it comes to Unfound news in a little bit of a lull here as we go into the summer of 2024. But I have to admit that something that's, I think about it every day. I'm not saying it's the first thought on my mind when I get up every day, but I'm always wondering, what is the next Unfound disappearance that is going to get resolved? I think about that at least once a day. What is it going to be? And as you know, I go through, more than anybody would ever know, go back through these old episodes. I don't listen to the interviews or anything, but the way I do my work on my HP, I see the pictures of all of these missing people that Unfound has featured over the last 7.5 years, I see their pictures every day. Every day. And I feel very fortunate that I can still look at a picture and say, oh, that's Cameron Remmer. Oh, that's Shanna Boydo. I can look at these pictures and I know who these people are. I feel very fortunate that I can still do that. And I still kind of can remember the circumstances. I might not be able to pick out exactly the right year or whatever, but I'll be able to look at the picture, know who it is, and have a pretty good idea of the circumstances, and also have a pretty good idea of what I think happened. Of course, I could end up being wrong, but I have a general idea what I think happened. I have a pretty good theory in my head. And so because of that, it's a question that comes to my mind every day. I wonder which Unfound disappearance is going to be solved next. How is that going to happen? Why is it going to happen? Is it going to be one of the ones we think that are a murder? Is it going to be one of the ones we think might be a suicide? Is it going to be one that we think a person walked off and might still be alive out there? And also on top of that, do we end up being wrong? We thought it was a murder, but it wasn't. We thought it was a suicide, but well, heck, the person's still alive. Like we got surprised last year with Brandon Roberts. It's a question I ask every day. And so when we go through these lulls, like I think we've kind of been having for maybe 2 months now, statistically, it says some point soon, it's all going to swing back the other direction where we're going to have a couple resolutions maybe happen within a week of each other. Or it may be even more than 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 within like a month or something. When you see these laws, when I feel these laws, I sometimes realize, it's something statistically, something is going to happen very soon. And then I start thinking, I wonder what that's going to be. What's it going to mean? What am I going to say about it? What am I going to think about it? What are all you going to think about it? So we're just kind of in a lull right now. So let's see. Let's see what's everybody is saying. What is cow tipping? Yeah, that's mean. Yeah, that's mean. Yeah, cow tipping. I know. Glenn says Forensic Files has a good John List episode. Okay. Maybe I've seen a lot of Forensic Files episodes. I can't remember that one specifically. Marty says he's looking forward to the meeting tomorrow night. Me too. Yep, cow tipping. Yes. Charlene, what's going on? Hi, everyone. Hope everyone is having a great day. Big hugs from Ireland. All right, Charlene, I'm going to ask you, being that you are from Ireland, and I realize that Ireland, it's its own country. It's not part of, the United Kingdom, or I get it. But I'm going to ask you and see if you know this answer. This is a trivia question I asked earlier in the show, maybe before you got on. What is the official animal of Scotland? You, as a person from Ireland, do you know what the official animal of Scotland is? Yeah, Marty is a super dad. I agree with that. Hazel, I'd never heard of cow tipping. I grew up in Gloucester. I don't know. I'm not going to pronounce that right. There were cows next door to me, but we didn't go tip no cows over as they slept. Yeah, that might just be an American thing, Hazel. And I can admit I've never done that. Even though I grew up with a cow pasture right next to my house, it never occurred to me. I had heard of it. I would never do that. It does seem kind of mean. I have to admit that when it comes to animals and things, I don't like to trick them and things. I see these videos of people playing with dogs and like tricking them and everything. I really don't care for that. If you're going to love animals, just be legitimate with them, be honest with them, don't try to confuse them and anger them on, on purpose or anything, so cow tipping, could never be something, that I could do. And I'll give you a perfect example of the way I am, like with animals and I guess insects too. If you can believe this is a true story. Maybe not quite 2 weeks ago, I got an Amazon delivery and it was left outside my door here on the 8th floor. Picked up the package and there was a cockroach under the package, sitting there on the carpet there outside of my door. Big one, pretty big one. Just sitting there, wasn't moving at all, couldn't tell if it was still alive. It was obvious to me that this cockroach had attached itself to this package. And so the Amazon driver brings it up there. The cockroach is attached to the package. And then when I picked the package up, there's the cockroach still on the rug. You know what I did? Came in here, got a paper cup, and it was still alive, but it was kind of sleepy or something. Scooped it up with a paper cup, and I put a disc on top of it so it couldn't get away. And I took it away. Did not kill it. I put it over there by where all the air conditioning units are and everything so it could continue to live and try to figure out how it was going to survive. I know a lot of people would just stepped on it and killed it. It's kind of the way I am. Got to admit. So there you go. Glenn, my cousin in Pennsylvania did it in college, Lebanon Valley College. I don't even know where that is. I'd rather tip drunks over, Deborah said. I'd rather cuddle an animal than trick it. Me too. Why do people insist on worrying their pets like that? You know, the dog gets all nervous. They do these things where, you stand there with a blanket, you throw it up, and then the person like disappears, and the dog's like, where did my owner go? Why do they do this stuff? It just causes stress in these pets. It's not fun. They don't know what's going on. Thank you, Amy. Good job. Thank you. Yeah, I just couldn't kill that cockroach. Charlene, I do believe that the official animal of Scotland is the unicorn. There it is. You're right. Needless to say, I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that I might be right. You are correct, Charlene. That is right. The unicorn. Hazel, Ed, sweetie. Yeah, you're a good man. Thank you. That's what I did. As God is my witness, if you believe in such things, scooped it up, took it over there, and I left it over there like on the ground by the air conditioning unit. When I walked over there like an hour later, it was gone. So I'm hoping it survived. I don't know. All right, let's go to some of this true crime news. In fact, no, I'm just going to answer, being that she's in here, I'm going to answer Charlotte's question right now so I don't forget. So Charlotte, of course, I think she asks a question every week. Charlotte says, Ed, I have a question for tonight. What do you think can be done, if anything, about people getting so involved with trials and being so loud and threatening to other people during high-profile trials? It is getting very wild and dangerous, like the Karen Reed trial. The person who actually died is not even thought about at all, and it's not right. The victims should be the number one priority. My answer, Charlotte, is we just have a culture problem. I'm not here. Of course, Charlene's here from Ireland. Hazel's here from New Zealand. We have some other people watching from other countries. I'm not going to talk about their countries. I'll just talk about my own. We have a culture problem. It's been brought about in a lot of variety of ways. I will tell you this. Way back what year was it that the show Survivor started? Had to have been late 90s, maybe right before I started at Star Trek in 2000. My perception, it started in 98 or 99. I remember, and what was I, 28, 29 years old? I said, this is trouble. This is trouble. And I know that sounds like, well, what the heck are you talking about, Ed? Once you convince people that all they have to do is be themselves to become stars, then everybody is going to want to be a star. And when you don't have necessarily, there used to be, not that long ago, even within my lifetime, if you wanted to get attention for anything, you actually had to be good at something. That is no longer the case. And in fact, maybe we could say this even started earlier with Johnny Knoxville and all of that. If you're willing to make an idiot of yourself, you can get attention now. And it's only gotten worse. I don't believe that is very good for the culture. We now have people who do things and want to get it on video because they're hoping to create some sort of viral video that then will get them a movie or whatever else and get a huge following, and they can become an influencer and everything else. This is not good. This is not good. As I've said before, this thing right here, this thing right here that I'm clicking on right here that all of you can see, it's called a microphone. This can be a weapon if you're not careful. This thing on my computer that I'm covering my thumb up with right now, the camera on my Mac, that can be a weapon if you're not careful. And too many people look at these devices as weapons. It's a lot of things put together, Charlotte. I also think because of kind of this reality TV and everything else, now everybody wants to be a star. So they just think, well, I just got to be, as you put it, loud and threatening, annoying, and I'll get attention. That's what I think. I also think, unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there, as we've stated, mental health issues are through the roof in the United States since when I was born in 1970. I think it's also that. I think we have a huge I don't think it's genetic. I think it's environmental. I think we have a huge mental health issue in the United States. Not genetically, but environmentally. Brought on by all of these problems that we as humans are born into us. I guess it's genetic, but it doesn't mean, it's like somebody who's predestined to have cancer. I don't mean it's something like that. These are things that are within us that if you do not control them, they will flourish. It's 7 deadly sins. Once again, if you watch the movie Seven, vanity and sloth and everything else. If you allow those things to blossom, this is what you get. And unfortunately, there just aren't enough penalties. I'm not saying necessarily law-wise. I don't mean it law-wise, but from our culture standpoint, there are not enough penalties for people who act like this. In fact, our culture breeds it. And people are rewarded. I also think, though, that there are just too many people out there who you should know something. When I do Unfound, this podcast, I will tell you, I think that it's something that I'm meant to do because I've always been interested in disappearances. It goes very well with the way my mind works. Don't ask me to manage people, but I can manage information pretty well. And I realize I'm very fortunate to be able to do this. This has certainly enriched my life. Certainly. But I certainly did not get into this to be famous. And I'm certainly not that famous or anything. I certainly didn't get into it so I could appear on some TV shows like I have and like I will. But a lot of people think, if I'm going to add me, if somebody wants to add meaning to their lives, this is what they think they need to do. So what can be done about it? There has to be a change in the culture. You can't say it's just, it's happening all over the United States. So it has to be something other than just a particular area of the United States or a particular education or anything. It's happening everywhere. And I do agree with you that I think all this Karen Read stuff is crazy. It's absolutely insane. It's become very cultish. And I don't know whether she's guilty or not. I have no idea. But I do know that all these people wearing these shirts and everything else, as I think I told somebody recently, I think like a year from now, those shirts are going to be excellent wash rags. Just people jumping onto a bandwagon. Some people need that in their lives. They have maybe they have some sort of emptiness and they want to devote themselves to a cause. I talked about this when I think I first talked about the Karen Read, a month ago, 6 weeks ago. There's a book that all of you should read. It's called The True Believer, The Nature of Mass Movements, and it's by a guy, his name is Eric Hoffer, Hoffer, came out in the 1950s. If you want to understand this, now granted, it's about politics, and it talks a lot about Nazi Germany and why all of these good people, quote unquote, got caught up with Hitler and everything else. This guy analyzes all of that. This is kind of what we're talking about here, even though this isn't politics. It's kind of the same thing. Too many people are willing to get whipped up in the fervor of it, the zealousness, and become zealots and everything. It's giving in to the worst parts of you. That's what people are doing. Now that I'll see here. Hazel says, I do lift the spider out of the shower before I get in so it doesn't drown. Look at you. Survivor started in 2000. Man, I was pretty close on that. I agree with this, Ed. Bloody, annoyingly talentless people. Ed, Survivor started in May. I knew a friend I met in March 2000 discussed Survivor. One couple months after I met her. Admired talent. Rolls eyes at wannabes. We have like a Paris Hilton Kardashians problem in our culture. And when people think that they can become famous and rich and not really do anything with their lives and add value to other people's lives and be giving and everything else, this is what you get. So it's a culture issue, and it comes out, and it's come out in the Karen Read trial. It's come out with, of course, everything that's been said and done regarding Mara Murray's disappearance. All the idiots that got involved in that only for their own personal gain, and elsewhere. True crime brings a lot of this stuff out, as does a lot of other parts of our culture. Also brings this behavior out. It's horrible. It's horrible. Like I said, the microphone and the camera can be weapons in the hands of the wrong people. And it seems to me that we just have more wrong people as a percentage of the entire population than we had in decades past. Would flip back? Probably will. I don't know what'll cause that to happen, but that's my answer. I'm not here for, not passing any laws. I don't even know what that would look like. But nobody's willing to admit this. I think the problem we have is I think too many people like it. I think too many people like the craziness and everything. Once again, I think this is This is leaning into and buying into the worser parts of ourselves when we do that. I think so. That's the only answer I got. It's a culture issue. It's a bad culture issue. It's not a legal one. Could be a moral one. It's not necessarily an ethical one, but it's certainly a culture one. It's one of those things like I've talked about before. It's one of those things where, well, it's not illegal. It's not immoral. It's not unethical, but dang, is it icky. It's kind of one of those things. There you go. The UK has a missing persons problem, just like the United States does. So I'm going to read this article to you. It's pretty long. I'm not going to read all of it. 2 cases months apart brought home to Charlie Hedges just how much police were failing when a person was reported missing. The first landed on his desk in October 97 with a note from his inspector. Can you sort this out, please, Charlie? At the time, Hedges was a sergeant with the Thames Valley Police in Bletchley. The case involved a 19-year-old man, Hedges called him Rob, which is not his real name, who had attended a rave in Milton Keynes and failed to return to the guest house where he was staying. As Hedges soared through the scant paperwork, he could see that the police response had been, quote unquote, a bloody mess, figuratively, not literally. One of the key things was there was no ownership. There was a dispute between my force, which covered Milton Keynes. Milton Keynes, by the way, is an economist. We're all Keynesians now. And the force where Rob came from, 200 miles away, over who was responsible. Have we not talked about this in the United States disappearances? I, of course, have called it the hot potato syndrome. One police department doesn't want it, wants to throw it to the other one. That one doesn't want it, throws it back and forth. I don't want it, you can have it. It's too tough for me. I don't want it, you can have it. It's too tough for me. The hot potato syndrome. So that's what he's talking about here in the UK as well. It just had been recorded on a piece of paper and battered around every step of the way. Things weren't happening the way they should. There was no support for the family, no point of contact, no updates. The assumption was he's a young man out having a good time. He'll turn up. He'll be okay. Wow. I guess the UK and the United States shares more than just a common language. A closer look at Rob's disappearance quickly sounded alarm bells. Building a relationship with Rob's mother convinced Hedges that this was not a young man caught up in partying, but something completely out of character. Rob had been born when his parents were teenagers, and Rob's father had left the house one day and never returned. He was killed in an accident at 19. Her son, then 19 himself, would never inflict this on her again through choice, she said. Inquiries about the venue quickly produced witness accounts of someone fitting Rob's description close to a lake in the early hours of the rave. CCTV footage confirmed it was Rob, and some of his clothing were found nearby, but the subsequent underwater search was inadequate. You aren't going to believe this story. You aren't going to believe this. This is why I say, when people start saying, well, they searched the woods, the missing person's not there, that doesn't mean anything. Hedges' primary search area was a reed bank, but he was informed it yielded nothing. More days passed. It was only when he ordered another search and oversaw it himself that he saw the diver was purposely avoiding the reeded area, later explaining that reeds were too difficult to search. When Hedges insisted on it, guess what? Rob's body was quickly located. I realize, and you should know, over the last so many years, the way I've talked about searches, I've gotten some crap. I've gotten crap from people with dogs. I've gotten crap from search volunteers, on and on and on. I'm not wrong. If police divers will take the easy way out, then everybody will take the easy way out. I am not wrong. Still, many questions remain answered. Toxicology tests on Rob's body were negative. There had been sightings of another male at the lake at the same time, but what happened to Rob that night was never established. The investigation had been too slow, to slapdash. It wasn't surprising that Rob's family raised a complaint and Hedges found himself under investigation. That case changed my life completely. The fallout led to Hedges having a breakdown and taking time off work. So even though this Hedges detective did the right thing, he was the person who got the crap. On returning to duty, he set out to transform the police response to a missing persons case. He has spent decades developing national police guidance, decision-making tools, and expertise. He's worked on some of the UK's most high-profile disappearances, including those of David Kelly, the weapons expert who killed himself in 2003, and April Jones, the 5-year-old who was abducted and murdered in 2012. His book, Missing, which charts his career, is dedicated to Rob. So let me see if he talks about the other case. A few months after Rob's disappearance, an 80-year-old man with dementia was reported missing in a rural area near Bletchley, yet for days, nothing was done to locate him. It was pretty horrifying. It was as if they were just waiting for him to turn up again, says Hedges. Taking charge, he quickly found witness accounts of an elderly man wandering the footpaths. One person, concerned for the man's welfare, had reported the sighting immediately, but police hadn't acted on it or made the connection. Hedges drew up a search area and enlisted a voluntary search and rescue team who found the man's body tangled in brambles. A faster response could have saved this man's life. He was found deceased. Having already highlighted the problems with Rob's case, I naively thought that someone would have sorted it, but the same mistakes were being made. I was angry, frustrated, and I realized that if you want to make a difference, you've got to do it yourself. This is the exact reason I tell families, if you want any happiness, if you want anything to get done, you're going to have to do it yourself. Sucks. Way it is. Before Hedges was able to work out how, he had to step out of policing for several months. It was partly Rob's case, the complaint, the investigation into me, the whole trauma around it. He would arrive at work with anger churning in his stomach, feeling constantly on edge and ready to explode. He was soon signed off sick. Counseling helped, but he developed coping mechanisms that he relies on to this day. Being in nature is one of them. When he returned to work, he applied to the Police Research Award Scheme for funding to create a police guide to the investigation of missing persons and was astounded to get it. I was an underachiever at school. I was never academic. I struggled to get O levels, whatever that means. Hedges had only joined the police when a career advisor mentioned that her dad was in the police, and it seemed like an interesting job. With the PRAS project, I was doing things I'd never have believed I had the capacity to do. It led me to more research, secondments, international collaborations, policy involvement. The journey has been absolutely unbelievable. So as you can see in the article, like I said, is pretty long. You can Google and find it if you'd like to do so. But it's a problem everywhere. I don't want anybody to think, even though we cover mostly American disappearances on Unfound, once in a while we venture up to Canada. We go over to Wales. We went down to New Zealand, but it's mostly here in the United States. That this is happening everywhere. Everywhere. Where searches are being blown off, people are taking the easy way out. No plan, no experience, no knowledge, nothing to rely on. Common. Just something about it. Something about disappearances causes people to want to cut corners and things. And it seemed like in this situation where it cost at least the one man, the 80-year-old, it cost him his life. So there you go. Admire, thank you at your yeah. Okay, Sir Todd. There are lazy police everywhere, huh? There are lazy people everywhere. And, once again, it's my perception that, as you know, before I started Unfound, I was a zealous consumer of disappearance news and going on to web sleuths and everything else. And I have to admit that it wasn't until starting this podcast that I really began to discover how badly searches are done and how we still do them as if it were the 1940s and everything else. Whereas this is something I have to tell you, in all the years as a consumer of disappearance news, like all of you, what I would say on the other side of the microphone, this was not a topic that I ran across very often. I can't remember ever running across it. Because coming into doing Unfound, I was thinking, well, searches are done pretty well. So my impression of all of those years of reading about disappearances are searches are pretty reliable. They aren't. What it means to me is that I guess it very well may be when I'm one of the first people to talk about them in these terms. Maybe. And all the shortcuts and how they aren't taken seriously and everything else. So I'll continue to do that. But I wanted to read that article to you. All right, moving on. Remember those two women who went missing? We now know that they were murdered, and it had to do with custody issues. I'm going to read an update on that story. The bodies of two Kansas women who disappeared in Oklahoma were found in a buried freezer, according to recently unsealed court documents. The bodies of Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly, both of Hugoton, Kansas, were found April 14th, buried on land in rural Texas County, rented by Tad Cullum, who is among 5 people charged with kidnapping and killing the two women, according to documents filed May 15th. Also found on the land, which Cullum rented for cattle grazing, were articles of clothing, duct tape, and a knife, each with possible blood on them. In addition to black tape, electrical cord, and a combination stun gun flashlight were found, according to the documents. Cullum, 43, and his girlfriend, Tiffany Adams, both of Keys, Oklahoma, husband and wife Cole and Cora Twombly of Texhoma, and Paul Grice are each charged with 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, and a single count of conspiracy to commit murder. All are being held without bail, and a gag order in the case prohibits attorneys from commenting on the case. Investigators have said Butler and Adams were in a bitter child dispute over custody of Butler's children, who were Adams's grandchildren. Let's see what everybody, see if... Hazel says, going back to the previous story, they should have worked hard on the old guy missing because of his dementia, you'd think. You would think, Hazel. So, regarding these two women, this is something I think that we have to remember. That obviously hello, Fairy, what's going on tonight? Good to see you. This is something that was obviously planned out. And, of course, it was resolved, within a couple weeks. We need to remember this regarding disappearances. We really, really need to remember this because I think, my perception is doing this podcast is that very, very few disappearances are what we would call planned. We certainly had some, certainly like Tyler North. That was certainly one. And well, look at it. The people got caught. Took a little while, but they eventually got caught. Of course, they still have yet to go on trial. But my perception is that very few of the disappearances that we've featured on Unfound were what we would call planned out. And what it also shows is planning. Of course, we think, we planned this out. We're not going to get caught. What's amazing how many people plan these things out and still get caught. Now, there are exceptions. Of course, Jeff Nichols, who got lured by a set of golf clubs. That's really going back in Unfound's history to the beginning of 2017. That was surely planned. And his ex-wife and her family have gotten away with it to this point. And it's been quite a while. Very sad. That was certainly planned. And of course, any of the ones that maybe we can attach to a luring kind of idea that are still unsolved, those are also what we would call planned. But this shows that, think about this. I mean, think about what happened here with these two women. I mean, bad, just horrible, 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 horrible. But all these people, these 5 people, at some point they decided, you know what? We want to make Veronica Butler disappear. She's in a custody dispute. We don't want her to win. So what do we have to do to win? So they come up with this idea. We're going to kill her and anybody who's with her the next time she comes to get their kids. So they get all the equipment. They have a place they have a freezer that they're going to put the bodies in. They plan this all out. Who knows how long they were working together to do this. And still, it got resolved in a couple weeks. So planning does not guarantee that people are going to get away with a crime. I think another good example of this, and I think that when I first talked about these 2 women's disappearances, and now we know they're murders, what also came to mind was the Pike County shootings in Ohio from several years ago. That was planned as well. That family, the parents and the 2 kids, they went over to, what was it, 3 separate buildings, killed 9 different people in 3 separate buildings, however many it was. And that was planned out too. Now, that took a little longer to figure out, but it was also a custody issue. But even that, planned out, still got caught. This then causes me to ask the question, well, then why is it, if all of these people who are planning these things get caught, then why is it that so many spur of the moment killings go unsolved? Virtually, I'm inclined to believe, for example, that all of the man-said types of disappearances, almost all of them were unplanned. These were crimes of passion. And still, seemingly, these guys have gotten away with murder. In conditions that I do not believe were planned. On the other hand, these people plan maybe for months to kill these 2 women, and they don't successfully get away with it. The Pike County people plan it all out, don't successfully get away with it. Now, of course, those are murders. Of course, these 2 women were missing. So I really, really want you to think about that. I realize that our minds really like to go to the creative side. We all take an interest maybe in mystery novels like Agatha Christie and how complex those plots can be. And I have to tell you, I haven't seen the most recent one, the Venice one, but I saw the other 2 movies that came out within the last few years, Death on the Nile and Murder on the Orient Express with Johnny Depp, and they are fantastic. But on the other hand, we have to realize that that's not real life. And that seldom are the schemes to cause people's disappearances very, very complex. And in fact, you might say the more complex they get, the more likely that somebody's going to get caught. And to me, this is what it sounds like happened here. This is what it sounds like happened here. That it was just a little too much. I mean, look at all of, really look at all of the stuff that they collected, buried in a freezer. You have the duct tape. You have electrical cords. You have a stun gun that also could be a flashlight. You have, all this stuff. It's just too much. It's great if you have, you're a mystery writer and you get to sit around for months figuring out how you're going to craft this mystery that nobody will be able to figure out until you reveal it on the last page of the book. Real life is a lot more unpredictable. So This is something that, I even can go back to last week's disappearance with Brianna Maitland. Certainly could have been an abduction, but I would not say that it was planned. Even though I think a lot of people believe that. Just simply because do a lot of planning, but just one thing goes wrong and the whole thing goes up in smoke. And that's usually what happens. We have to keep in mind, even though, for example, going back to the Jeff Nichols disappearance, yes, they've never been charged with anything, but nobody has any doubt about what happened. So even when we get to that, we know what happened. We just can't prove it. Something to keep in mind regarding when you start thinking about planned disappearances, when we think there might be foul play. These intricate plans. This is why, for example, when it comes to Mara Murray and all that, too complicated. When people start talking about somebody came by and picked her up, it just gets so complicated so fast. In my opinion, it's the same way with Brianna Maitland. When you really, really sit down and think how it must have gone to have the car backed up against that house, you realize how complicated that must have been. And it just kind of defies what we know about real life. My opinion. So keep that in mind. These people planned it all out, still got caught within, weeks. Let's see here. Hello. Hazel says, I never heard these details of how they were found in a buried freezer. They put it all together. Like it says, a lot of this is nobody's allowed to talk about this right now, Hazel, as they're still putting together the case. I've never heard of the Brokenwood Mysteries. Never heard of that. Marty is talking about the recent Agatha Christie movies. They were all great. Haunting in Venice was enjoyable. I haven't seen that one yet, Marty. I guess I'm just waiting for it to come onto a streaming service or it to play on regular TV. I think that Kenneth Branagh as the director, of course, playing Hercule Poirot, I think he does an excellent job. I just love everything about them. I'm certainly looking forward to that. But we just have to realize real life is not a mystery novel. They planned, but were kind of sloppy in the execution, involved too many people. Previous threats to the victim, obviously, who done it. Carol says when it's planned, they leave some kind of trail, right? Hazel, kidnapping someone when you have a planned meeting with them anyway, handing over kids is one ginormous red flag. It is, Hazel. It is, Charlotte. The worst part of these planned murders is that the poor little kids are left without their parents, and in many cases, their grandparents too. All for what? For power-hungry people to try to win. Rockford might believe the Maitland was planned, but that case is so baffling than open to just about anything. I'm certainly open to the idea that she was abducted. No proof of that. And I certainly wouldn't laugh at anybody who said that. Certainly. All right. So these women were eventually found buried in a freezer. Now, you should know that there is a disappearance that Unfound has covered, Kent Jacobs, where it is thought that he is also buried in a freezer on some property that is still off limits. I don't know if there's any proof to that or not. I don't know, but that goes way back to like the first year of Unfound. Kent Jacobs, he was over at a friend's place. Friend fell asleep allegedly during a NASCAR race. He woke up. Kent wasn't there. If you believe that. But the rumor is that Kent is buried in a freezer down the road from where he was. All right, moving on. And this kind of, I'm not going to read this entire article. It's too long. But this kind of already goes back to what Charlotte already asked me about the Karen Reed stuff and people being so crazy and everything. It was an article. It's called The Dark Side of True Crime. True crime is booming. Streamers pump out hit true crime documentaries while cable channels dedicate all their programming to the genre. A legion of podcasters, YouTubers, TikTokers, and vloggers have built audiences of millions. They can do a lot of good too. Forgotten cases can be rediscovered by citizen journalists, and sleuthers committed to finding justice for victims can uncover hidden evidence and new suspects in crimes thought unsolvable. But true crime has a dark side. Thoughtful creators can build a loyal and large listener base, but for some, resisting the siren song of shock journalism and quick audience growth is simply too enticing to ignore. You don't say. Driven by sensationalism, conspiracy theories, and irrationality, these creators appeal to our deepest fears and our latent distrust of the justice system. The consequences are all around us. I made this point this week in the blog for James Litka. All the smiley face killer theory served to do was get more young people killed. That's all it did. That's all it did. All it did was take us away from what really, really was going on. And that is young people drinking too much, being alone, not being in shape to actually walk home or whatever they were going to do, and they got killed. They died. They didn't get murdered. They died. That's all the smiley face killer theory did, was took us away from what was really happening and how to fix the real problem. That's all it did. All because sometimes too many people give in to their worst tendencies. In Delphi, Indiana, Richard Allen, the accused murderer of 13-year-olds Abby Williams and Libby German, is preparing for trial. On February 13th, 2017, the girls were brutally slain on a public hiking trail not far from their homes. Allen has placed himself on the trial at the time of the murders. Police have forensically linked him to the scene with a bullet that matches a gun he owns. He's reportedly confessed multiple times to multiple people, but evidence is no match for a shocking story well told. Allen didn't kill the girls, according to his attorneys. Rather, they were sacrificed by white supremacist members of the neo-pagan religion Odinism, aided by a cover-up orchestrated by law enforcement. While one might expect that waking the echoes of the satanic panic would meet with derision, certain corners of the true crime world loved it. Recently, Allen's true crime supporters launched a legal defense fund, advertising it with the hashtag Justice for Abby and Libby, the names of the girls Allen is accused of brutally murdering. As of this writing, more than 700 people have donated in excess of $40,000 to the cause. Like I said, Charlotte, culture problem. You know, the bad part about this is the people who get caught up in this, I'm sure in their regular daily lives, they are fine parents, fine wives and husbands, boyfriend and girlfriends. They're good employees, but they're kooks. Culture problem. You know, that's the scariest part about it. It's easy to just say these people who act like this, well, they're just crazy and everything in their lives. Their lives are totally in disorder and everything else. I don't believe that. We have a lot of otherwise decent people who have lost their minds on too many things like this. The siren call of conspiracy is not limited to those merely accused of crime. From Scott Peterson to Adnan Syed to Stephen Avery, big budget documentaries and slickly produced podcasts may use misinformation, police conspiracy theories, and emotional manipulation to convince millions their subjects are innocent, victims of a rigged system. This is the difference between news and entertainment. The financial return is vast, but so are the consequences. The victims are forgotten. The families left to relitigate again and again the guilt of their loved ones' killers. The faith of the general public in the judicial system is shaken, endangering our communities and making it harder to bring justice to those who deserve it. And it's not just victims who suffer. Inundated with false innocent stories, many in the public become jaded, and real cases of false conviction are less likely to be heard and less likely to be believed. The voices of the truly innocent are drowned out by the cacophony. All true. This is, I could say so much. I could say so much about this and go into all sorts of things, but it really rings true to me. This whole thing about the justice system and everything else, which I think, is kind of also kind of on trial with the Karen Reed trial, etc. You have to realize there's no going back from this. Once you open the Pandora's box about how there's conspiracies in the justice system, there's conspiracies here, there's conspiracies there, it's hard to put that back together. It's like Humpty Dumpty. Once you've cracked it, you can't put it back together. The issue is, I'm not saying our justice system is perfect, certainly not. But when people are undermining it for no other reason than just because they want to win something, because they want to get attention and everything, it's bad news. We certainly know there have been people who have convicted for no good reason. We know people have gotten screwed. We know there are crooked lawyers and judges and everything else, but they are a minority. The problem we have, it's kind of become like a sporting event. Remember, sports is entertainment. Whoever wins and loses doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's just entertainment. It's just like going to a concert. But people treat actual serious things in our culture the way they treat, it's just anything goes. Anything goes. And I have to admit, it's one of the reasons that I've, in the last so many years, backed away from a lot of, sporting stuff and getting really, really deep, going like I used to go to a Steelers bar and everything. I just had to separate my stuff from it because, man, that stuff is all too cultish for me. It's all too weird. This whole thing that, you're going to call that person, every athlete, every name in the book, but if he comes and plays for your team, he's the best guy ever. I can't take it. The problem is this is now happening in areas of our culture where it actually means something. That doesn't necessarily mean it. I think it's stupid, but it's not necessarily hurtful or anything. Who cares who wins? But when that starts happening in the justice system and you start undermining prosecutors and judges and defense attorneys and the law and everything else, just because you're treating it as a sporting event, it's hard to go back from that. It's hard. So I agree with this. This is the exact reason that we don't do things like that at Unfound. It's the exact reason, as I've told you many times, that I had a long time to think about the kind of podcast that I wanted to do before Unfound started. And I wanted it to be news. I didn't want it to be entertainment. We weren't going to do sensationalism. We weren't going to do psychics. We touch on theories once in a while. We weren't really going to go deep into theories. All in an effort to stay away from the crap that is mentioned in an article. It's on purpose. That's not by accident. It's on purpose. And stay away from ghosts and black holes and UFOs and all these things. It's on purpose. And I will say it again. Some people just have no shame. They see this microphone, they see that camera, and they see weapons. That's what they see. Now, the problem, of course, Now, there's the flip side of this, though. I read this article. You can go find it. I'm not going to name what particular news site it is on. Now, here's the problem. On the very same media site where that article is written, there is an article about the serial killer Christopher Wilder and how he could have killed Tammy Leppard. Now, to me, that's sensationalism. So we have on this website, the dark side of true crime and sensationalism and how bad it is and everything. And then in the same website, they're talking about how Christopher Wilder killed Tammy Leppard. That is total speculation. And as a person who knows Tammy's disappearance pretty well, we all know who did what to Tammy Leppard. The guy's name is Keith Roberts. Not mentioned at all in the article about Tammy Leppard. This is what drives us all nuts. This is why I tell all of you, media in the United States in all forms, on all topics, sucks. Sucks. And I'm a member of the media. So they get through talking about, we really have to cut down on the sensationalism and everything else. And then, they mentioned this Christopher Wilde guy who was a race car driver. And I've certainly heard that he's been connected to Tammy Leppard's disappearance. But whoever wrote that article did not take even 10 minutes to look in her disappearance and realize surely the guy who says he dropped her off did not do that. Surely not. So let's see what everybody is. Yeah. Rockford says missing 411. Yeah, our non-friend of Unfound, David Polides, is about the same as Smiley Face. Now, by that I mean that it focuses attention on the wrong aspects of cases that deserve serious attention using science rather than fraud. What I've said about David Polides is that, he's going on and on how there are serial killers or whatever in our national parks. There's no proof of that. No proof of that. And all it really does then is tell people, if I'm going to a national park, I just have to make sure I don't get murdered. When really, the reason so many people go missing and die in national parks is because people are going into these national parks who aren't prepared. If the story was that these people are dying because national parks have some of the harshest terrain and environments anywhere in the United States, people would prepare better. Instead, they're told, well, we just have to work, if we see a suspicious guy at our campground, that's what we have to worry about. So when they don't see that suspicious guy at that campground, what do they automatically think? I don't have anything to worry about. When really, the danger was never that. The danger is that mountain in front of you. That's the danger. It's those animals that are crawling around out there that can run faster than you are that are the danger. But never pass up a chance to tell a good story. Same thing. I think I wrote this in the blog. You have to remember something. We can call a problem whatever we want. We can call it whatever we want. It exists outside of our definition of it. We have to remember that. When we get it wrong, when there is a problem out there of any kind, and we misidentify it, that doesn't hurt. The problem stays the same. It only hurts us. It doesn't change. In fact, it makes it more likely that that problem will strike us. This is insane. It certainly is. So true, Charlotte. Wise Knight, what's going on? Almost missed you again tonight. Well, we got about 20 minutes left here. Wise Knight, I hope you enjoy it. You can go back and partake in the whole thing later tonight, maybe, Wise Knight. Cranky says U.S. media is junk food entertainment at this point. It certainly is. Is there a statistic for people who disappear on their own? I believe that's pretty rare. I will tell you, Wise Knight, that I've done it. I've had a few listeners who do this go through all of Unfound's episodes and put them into categories, either murder or non-murder. All right. So when we say murder, we couldn't know what that is, but non-murder could be suicide, accident, walked off, overdose, any of those things. So we got murders over here and everything else in another category. It's kind of broken down that between 60 and 65% of the disappearances that Unfound is featured, and we have to remember the average age of a disappearance on Unfound is 20 to 22 years old. 60 to 65% of them are murders. And so the other 35 to 40% are what we would call disappeared on their own for some reason. Your mileage may vary. You're more likely to go through all 330 some disappearances and decide for yourself. But given that I've done it, I had a few listeners do that, and we all came up in that 60 to 65% murder range. There might be something to that. Not that scientific, but it's the best I can do without, paying tens of $1,000s to really, have some statistician come in and really figure out all the values and everything. Meaning disappear on purpose, start a new life. I don't have a number off the top of my head. It's just hard to say, Wise Knight, but yeah, it's pretty rare. It happens. It happens. But of course, we've had at least one. Mary Jane Van Gilder did it. And she did it successfully for 45 years. So there you go. Let me go to this article right here. I want to talk about this young man who was found in a chimney who was not identified until many years later. After more than 3 decades, DNA researchers and authorities have identified a skeleton found in the chimney of a Madison, Wisconsin music store. Owners of the Good and Loud music store found the Dane County chimney dough on September 3rd, 1989, while removing a boiler, according to the DNA Dough Project. They first saw a skull through a pipe before discovering the full skeleton, which was wearing an iron cross necklace and rotted clothing. A forensic autopsy revealed the remains belonged to a white man between 18 and 35. He stood about 5'7". The DNA Dough Project worked with the Madison Police Department to identify the remains. On Monday, the project announced the ID. Ronnie Joe Kirk of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Was not on the Charlie Project, by the way. Madison police conducted the DNA Dough Project in 2019, 30 years after the skeleton's discovery, for help in identifying it using a new DNA investigation method. This was such a unique case with adoption and multiple generations of different marriages. Despite having a relatively close DNA relative match in the family, Gwen Knapp of the DNA Dough Project said, the shrewd genealogy work done by my team was amazing to tease out the various relationships. We're so excited that we can give Ronnie Kirk his name back and hope his family has some closure for Ronnie being missing for so long. Kirk's last known ties were in Madison. It's unclear how he got into the chimney, but it would have been impossible for him to get in from inside the building, the DNA Project said. So he climbed down the chimney, I guess, like Santa Claus. His cause of death is still unknown. Now, it did give some background in another article regarding him. Gwen Knapp of the DNA Dough Project said it took more than 2 years to develop the DNA profile suitable for investigating genetic genealogy for Kirk. Born in 1942, Kirk was adopted, married, and divorced twice and had 3 children. This was such a unique case with adoption. We're so excited that, Kirk's last confirmed contact with relatives was in 1970 when he divorced his second wife in Missouri, according to Madison police spokesperson Stephanie Fryer. Kirk has 2 children from his first marriage and 1 from his second. They're all in their 50s and did not know each other until investigators reached out. Both of his ex-wives remarried. So he would have, I guess, been about 28 years old when he went missing. Now, is that the exact year he got into the chimney? I guess that's hard to say. So, but I have to tell you, I've read stories like this before. People being found dead in chimneys. You'd think this would like be a once in a lifetime type of thing. It's not. I think if you were to start Googling and really narrow down the Google search parameters, you would find this happens more than you realize, that people get into chimneys and get stuck and die there. This just happened to be a disappearance that lasted quite a while. What's up with all these people coming up missing in Texas as of the last few months? Lax border issues related, possibly. You're saying it, Cranky, but I don't know if that's statistically true. I read missing persons news every day, and that may be your perception. It's not been my perception. I'm not sure what the statistics. You'd have to start comparing to other states and everything else to really get a good handle on it. So I don't know. The only person I can think of who did that was Olivia Newton-John's boyfriend, Patrick something. Well, maybe, Wise Knight. I'm not convinced that he started a new life. I'm not convinced of that. Maybe. But, you know, and of course, I could be a little biased. Of course, maybe some of you forget, but Phil Klein was involved in that, and he claimed that he did track down Olivia Newton's boyfriend, Patrick. But we all know what our idea about Phil Klein is at this point. So, you know, I'm doubtful. I'm doubtful that Phil Klein or anybody else actually tracked this guy down. Would have been nice if they took a picture of him. So, I just maybe don't agree with you on that, Wise Knight. So, yeah, there was the teen in recent years. Yeah, there's some people do it. Now I have to look into that. I had no idea. Yeah. So I just, so there we go. This is why, you know, once again, this is one of those things where this is why we can't apply common sense. This has been a thing, being that somebody brought common sense up in a comment on YouTube. And I just had to seriously ask the person, since when did common sense have anything to do with any of what we do here? When people are getting found in chimneys, common sense, you just have to put that to the side. I think more likely what you have to think about is, what is the simplest answer? And you have to realize common sense and the simplest answer are often in disappearances two totally separate things. Never confuse common sense and simplest. I think what I'm saying is our experience with disappearances, for the most part of the ones that have been solved that we all know about, the unfound ones, the answers were pretty much the simplest answers, even though we have been at least surprised a little bit. Specifically, Daniel Villarreal, nobody was surprised that he was dead. It's just that he ended up dead in somebody's pool house. I don't know how anybody could have predicted that, but he was dead. Yeah, the teen who disappeared and was found in the chimney, Harley Dilly. The name does not sound familiar to me, Wise Knight. But I'm guessing that's true. What do I want to talk about next? What do I want to cover? I'm going to answer. Glenn, who is in here tonight, did ask me a question. I think I better answer it. It was kind of a two-part question. I'm not really in a position to answer one part of it because it was asking about any updates or anything, and I just simply tagged Kelly on that. But I will answer the other part on it, and that had to do with Brian Schaefer and the wallet video that I did a few years ago. I was curious if anything ever happened regarding Brian Schaefer and the possible wallet transfer. Nothing has come of that, Glenn. I think if you go and look, and I leave most of the comments on there, I think a lot of people think that I'm full of it. I'm seeing what I want to see. I will tell you that I have watched that video at least a few times since I made that video on the YouTube channel. I don't think I'm just seeing what I want to see. And in fact, you know that I'm usually a guy that's pretty boring when it comes, to these types of things. But I just don't think that his movements can be easily explained away as well. He was just trying to pat her on her back, or what some of these people have said. It does certainly look like he put something in her purse in that video. And the reason it didn't get exposed until a couple years ago, even though everybody's seen that video, is every time you watch it on TV, it's cropped. Well, finally, the entire video with no crop, nothing taken off or cut to fit the screen is shown. And it's amazing how that works. So, but nothing's come of that. The woman who's involved in that has never contacted me or Kelly or anybody else regarding that. So nothing's ever come of it yet. But I think the reason it has to be considered is because, as we know, there's this well-known fact that days later, weeks later, Brian Schaefer's phone did ping in the area where this woman lived, coincidentally, or her mother lived, or something like that. Something to think about. Let's see here. Phil Klein was involved with that little boy's case who disappeared from the campsite. Yeah, I'm not getting into that. Rockford says, my office called and told me someone mentioned disappearances where the person started a new life. Would love to revisit that topic. You'll have to maybe tell me more about this offline or through email or something, Rockford, so we can have a more complete discussion about that. Yeah. WiseNet Lisa, many people don't think Phil Klein is a very good PI, but I don't know. Yeah. With all respect, I don't see a wallet transfer. I see someone spacing out and then rejoining a conversation. I say this is someone who's done that 500,000 times. Okay. That's fine. Okay. One more item. Just give you all something that maybe going to mention something that maybe a person that some of you have never heard of. His name is Ioannis Kuluanu. Have you ever heard of this guy? Ioan is his first name. Culianu is his last name. Has any of you ever heard of him? He was a Romanian historian of religion, culture, and ideas, a philosopher and political essayist, and a short story writer. He served as a professor of history of religion at the University of Chicago from 1988 to his death in 1991. And had previously taught the history of Romanian culture at the University of Groningen. An expert in Gnosticism and Renaissance magic, he was encouraged and befriended by Mircea Eliade, though he gradually distanced himself from his mentor. Kuluanu published seminal work on the interrelation of the occult, eros, magic, physics, and history. Now, why am I talking about this guy? Have I lost my mind? On Tuesday, May 21st, 1991 at noon, just minutes after concluding a conversation with his doctoral student, Alexander Arguelles, on a day when the building was teeming with visitors to a book sale, Kuluanu was murdered in the bathroom of Swift Hall of the University of Chicago Divinity School. He was shot once in the back of the head with a .25 caliber automatic weapon, semi-automatic weapon. The identity of the killer and the motive are still unknown. Speculation arose that he had been killed by former Securitate agents due to political articles in which he attacked the communist regime. The murder occurred a year and a half after the Romanian Revolution of December 1989 and Nicolae Ceausescu's death. Before being killed, he had published a number of articles and interviews that heavily criticized the Ionescu post-revolution regime, making Colalnu one of the government's most vocal adversaries. Several theories link his murder with the Romanian intelligence service, which was widely perceived as the successor of the Securitate. Several pages of his Securitate files are inexplicably missing. Some reports suggest that Colalnu had been threatened by anonymous phone calls in the days leading up to his killing. Ultranationalist and neo-fascist involvement as part of an Iron Guard revival in connection with the nationalist discourse of the late years of Ceausescu's rule and the rise of the Vatra Romanian mayor parties was not itself excluded from the scenario. So this is a guy who was in the United States writing about things going on in his home country of Romania. Once again, going back to that time when the Berlin Wall fell and all of these countries were getting their independence, Czechoslovakia, now the Czech Republic, and Romania, and all those Eastern European countries. He was writing about how the government that was then coming into power wasn't much better. And then he gets shot in the United States at the University of Chicago. The only reason I'm bringing this up is that assassinations of foreign nationals in the United States is pretty rare. You have to realize that a lot of dissenters, whether it has to do with North Korea or China or Saudi Arabia or Iran or whoever else, a lot of those people flee those countries and come to the United States. And I've known about this murder for years, but it just kind of popped into my mind. And it is surprising that we don't have more of this here. Of course, just within the last year, couple years, Salman Rushdie, of course, they had that fatwa had been out on him for several years. He got attacked while he was at a speaking engagement, but luckily he survived, although he lost sight in one of his eyes. But it's kind of surprising to me, being that we have so many dissidents in this country who do write articles, who are high profile, talking about what is going on in their host countries, how they don't like the governments and the oppression and all these things. It's amazing that we don't have more shootings like this, especially, of course, since we are a freer society. People can freely travel in this country without papers, that we do have so many guns, and on and on and on and on here. It's just something that kind of caught my attention, maybe something for all of you to think about. Let's see what everybody's saying. Speaking of Schaefer, Brian Schaefer, a commenter on Reddit, is being sued for naming suspects. Kelly was on the Reddit thread discussing it, and I had a brief, pleasant exchange with her. I is being sued. I don't know anything about that. Kelly's not told me about that. I'll have to send her a message, Rockford. So there you go. That's interesting to think about. I think it's interesting. I mean, we have a lot of dissonant writers here. And knowing how we know governments in other countries, I have to admit, all of the critics, we'll just pick out a polarizing one, North Korea. We have a lot of people in this country who speak very ill of North Korea. And it's just amazing, given those countries, those government, the government's reputation, that they don't hunt some of these people down. And we know that Kim Jong-un, what did he do? He had his own brother-in-law or somebody poisoned in an airport. The guy died. Remember that? Something like that. So just something to think about. The only thing else I would say is whoever shot this guy was surely not an American assassin. No American assassin would ever use a .25 caliber. That would not happen. All right, let's go to this Friday's disappearance, and it's going to be a tough one. The disappearance of Ray Fausto Lepe, Lepe. He went missing from Salinas, California on July 19th of 2002. Disappearance that's going to be 22 years old. His siblings, I interviewed all three of his siblings at the same time, Janice, Alex, and Chris. It's a situation where Ray was going through some sort of custody issue with his ex-girlfriend over their daughter, who was very, very, very young. And he was working alone. He was employed at this produce business in the office. And that Friday evening, he was due to drive from Salinas down to Gonzales to visit his daughter, who was at that point in custody of his ex-girlfriend. The story is that he actually did go down there, met his daughter, and everything went smoothly. The thing is, though, his car ended up back in Salinas at the business. It was unlocked with the keys and his wallet in the console. And he was never seen again. It's going to be a tough one. Tough. Of course, we know about custody issues, what's come up before. But we have to think about this. If somebody did do something to him in Gonzales because of the custody issues, would that person really bring that car the whole way back to Salinas, which is like a 45-minute drive or something? Have to consider that. So Ray Fausto Lepe, Salinas, California, July 19th, 2002. Three of his siblings, Janice, Alex, and Chris, are the guests, and they did fantastic jobs. That will be this Friday. So that's all I got. That is the live show for May 27th of 2024. I hope you enjoyed it. I thought it was spectacular, but I'm biased, of course. I'm biased. And we will do this all again next Monday. However, before that, of course, the episode will come out on Friday. I should say next Sunday, I'm going to see Mr. Big, that like 80s, early 90s rock group, right over here at the Capitol Theater here in Clearwater. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll tell you all about that next Monday. That's all I have. Thank you so much. Sheree, thank you for moderating. And everybody take care. Consider supporting Unfound at Patreon or on YouTube. Good night, everyone. And say hi to the kids for me. Charlie? And heads on a swivel. Yes, thank you, Hazel. Heads on a swivel. Good night.